Vietnam as being very much an execution implementation market. But if you're an execution and implementation market, you're waiting to be directed on what to do or told what to do. The expectation has now changed. It's changed from a global perspective, regional perspective, and now a local perspective, that leaders or managers in Vietnam are expected to drive the strategy, initiate and innovate it. That requires a completely different skill set. The mistake that I see a lot of leaders doing is taking a hands-off approach. They're delegating this down to people that don't have the experience, and they're making a mess of it. So for me, when the experience level is quite low, leaders need to get in there, get their hands dirty, and guide their people on how to navigate this change or the transition. So for me, that's the biggest mistake.
Welcome back to Unlock Potential. I'm your host, David Archibald, and today we're going straight into the world of leadership, transformation, and talent strategy. My guest is Gary Malcolm. He's the managing director of LHH Vietnam, and Gary has spent his career helping organizations not only weather disruption, but actually grow stronger through it by investing in their people. If you lead a team or you want to prepare yourself for the next level of leadership, you're going to love this conversation. Gary, thanks for coming in to talk to me today. I know it's been a little tough trying to wrangle you into that chair, but I'm very happy you took the time to do that, because I really think that my channel is about helping people unlock potential in themselves. And I think like you're really good for this. Okay. And I was very fortunate enough to first see you speak actually at a Business Executive Network event, and Victor brought you in as a panelist. And then I'm like, wow, okay, this guy can really help. And I think that part of that Business Executive Network really works because the people that are in there are really trying to learn something so they can help other people. So I think you're a perfect guest for me today. So
Excellent. Looking forward to it.
Super happy. So give us a quick rundown on how'd you end up here in Vietnam with us?
Okay.
Or how'd I get to be here with you? You were here before.
Yeah. So a little bit of background. I've actually been in Vietnam now for over 20 years. So I came here in 2002. I initially came here as a bit of a career break. I just finished my master's. I really didn't know what I wanted to do. So I came over here and I came into the travel industry. And as soon as I arrived, I set up a travel company and I ran that for 3 or 4 years, and I sold off that business. And then I went back into management consulting, specializing in leadership development. So actually I spend a lot of time working one-on-one with senior executives and also with senior leadership teams here in Vietnam. So that's my technical side, but then I'm also running a management consultancy company here.
Yeah, and that's how I know you is from LHH. Now, you specialize in leadership training, and you are, as what I've been told, probably the most qualified by academics leadership coach in Vietnam, actually. I don't think anybody has the same credentials you have. But what's one leadership belief that's really guided you the most over your career?
Leadership belief. Actually, it's not something that's guided me, but it was one of those beliefs that I had to get rid of very early in my career journey. So I grew up and I was educated in Australia. So for those people who don't know much about Australian culture, we've got this belief that everybody is equal. We have a flat society. There's no hierarchy in the society. So I actually had this belief when I was very young, and I rejected authority. And fortunately or unfortunately, my first career was to become an officer in the military. So I was entering this very hierarchical organization, and I had this belief of the flat society, which was very at odds with what the military is all about. And I was also going in as a leader as well. So I got myself in a lot of trouble because I was rejecting authority. I was pushing back because of this wrong belief. And given the military is very hierarchical and it's got the means to punish you if you push back, I was getting myself in trouble all the time. It actually took me 5 years to start adjusting that belief. So I started to realize, hey, I'm part of the system. I'm a leader in the system. I've got to believe in hierarchy. If I want to have influence, if I want to have some sort of power, I need to start acting like a leader. So that's a long way of a long journey of sharing. This is a belief that I had to get rid of very early in my working career.
That's really good. I had no idea you were that rebellious. I mean, and obviously
it's still 5 years. Unfortunately, it's still there, and I still see myself pushing back on authority.
What was the defining moment that you realized that's probably not a good idea?
Actually, it was one of my bosses at the time who had to say, he turned around and said, hey, you're one of the leaders in the organization. Start acting like a leader. Stop being rebellious. But nobody did that for 5 years. So that was a real defining moment for me.
Wow, that's good. What was that guy's name?
To be honest, I can't remember him now.
Yeah. Well, you've been talking to a lot of people over the years. It's easy to forget people. I do the same thing. I always rack my brain for like 3 days, and it'll come to me. You know, many of the people that watch this podcast, they lead teams.
Yep.
And what's you think is one of the most underrated skills you need to be a leader?
Probably not a skill, but it's more about knowledge. And it was something that I learned probably about 15, 20 years ago. As part of my job, I've got to really deeply understand people. So I need to understand people's personality, their behaviors, what drives them. So this is something that I use every single day. So I've got a good understanding of personality behaviors. I understand why people communicate in a certain way, why they behave in a certain way, how they view the world, how do they make decisions. So that's a piece of knowledge that I'm using all the time. So it helps me adjust my style to other people. It helps me understand them. If I want to build a team, it helps me build a team, because what I'm looking for are behaviors that will complement each other or actually supplement strengths and weaknesses as well. So I'm constantly using that piece of knowledge. So it's not a skill, it's more on the knowledge side.
Yeah. Well, wisdom is definitely needed, and it takes time usually to get wisdom and pay attention to your surroundings, reflection.
Yep.
Once you make a mistake, you need to take a time to really think about, okay, how did I get there? Why did I do this? How can I fix that going forward? That's really, really good. What's one of the biggest challenges you see leaders in Vietnam face today?
Yeah, okay. I guess a theme that I'm hearing time and time again from leaders here is there's this expectation that people step up, they drive strategy and they drive initiatives. So I can understand that this is a challenge because historically Vietnam has been very much an execution implementation market, and Vietnam is excellent at doing that. But if you're an execution and implementation market, you're waiting to be directed on what to do or told what to do. So the expectation has now changed. It's changed from a global perspective, regional perspective, and now a local perspective, that leaders or managers in Vietnam are expected to drive the strategy, initiate and innovate, and that requires a completely different skill set.
Yeah, that's interesting. I see that it depends on whether you're maybe family-run business too has a whole different aspect to that issue versus maybe a very structured international business. So, wow, that's really good. All right, Gary, at LHH, you guide organizations through change. And what's one thing that most leaders get wrong about managing transition?
Okay. So I'll put this in the context of workforce transitions. This is quite a new area for Vietnam. If I go back even 5+ years ago, very dynamic market, most companies were growing. I used to joke that you could get up in the morning, do the same thing, not innovate, not do anything differently, and you'd still get 20 to 30% growth. The market was just going like that. But the situation's completely changed now. So in terms of transition, I think our experience in this market is not there. So to talk to your question directly, the mistake that I see a lot of leaders doing is taking a hands-off approach. They're delegating this down to people that don't have the experience, and they're making a mess of it. So for me, when the experience level is quite low, leaders need to get in there, get their hands dirty, and guide their people on how to navigate this change or the transition. So for me, that's the biggest mistake that I'm seeing.
No, I can see that very clearly, because I know if I don't get in and handle things directly myself, it won't happen, or it definitely won't happen the way that I see it to be happening. And I think that is basically a lot of times, like for my industry, is fairly new here, and the way we do business is very new here, so they just don't know any better. And also that comes from, we have to build the people up. I can't just go hire really experienced people to come in and just take in and do a job. So it has to happen from the leader, has to be able to be the teacher and understand how everything works.
Where we need to guide, we need to mentor. So if the experience is not there, we've got to take a completely different approach. But what I'm finding is leaders, there's a belief from leaders of it's best to be hands off. It's best to let people find their own way. Yeah. But when the experience doesn't exist, that's where we need to lean in and start guiding and mentoring our people.
I think you can do too much empowerment too.
Absolutely.
And that reminds me of the Air India CEO that went up and said the exact same thing that the other airline CEO said, and everybody's kind of blaming him. And I started thinking, man, he trusted his team too much. He empowered them too much. And that went to bite him for sure. Now, you've worked across several different cultures. What's a leadership lesson that pretty much holds true between cultures?
I'm not a huge believer on that culture has got a massive influence on the way people behave. I believe, and I've touched on this before, that personality trumps culture. That if you have two people that have similar personality, they're much more similar than two people who share the same culture. So with that said, yes, culture has got an influence on the way that we behave, but I feel that it's much more important to understand people's personality and therefore the behavior that drives that.
Yeah, that's totally correct. When I first came here from U.S., I was expecting people just to be completely different. And then very, very quickly, when the guy in Vietnam still has to ask his wife to buy the bike, I went, whoa, okay, well, maybe this isn't. And then when I went and dealt with the accounting team, wait a minute, they're the same type of people. And then technicians, the same type of personalities. So then I realized there's a little bit of culture on the surface, but the human being is still human being.
Yeah, that's right. And I came to that realization when I actually went on a workshop in Bangkok, and there was a group of people in the room, about 30 people, and we got matched up with people with similar personalities to us. And I was sat next to a young Thai lady, and I realized that I was much more similar to her than anybody else in the room. We talked the same language, we viewed the world the same, we made decisions the same way than the Australian who was sitting across the other side of the room, who had a completely different personality to me. We were just like chalk and cheese.
That's right. When you're dealing with businesses that are in trouble and you come in to advise them, what's something that the guys or gals that lead through that trouble.
Yep.
Well, what are some of the things that you see that they possess that maybe somebody that ends up failing completely?
Can you just
Like-
clarify that question?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
what is it you see in the leaders that succeed through troubled times
Yep.
different than the ones that maybe fail?
For me, it mostly comes down to experience. Have they had cross-functional experience? Have they had experience across cultures? Have they had experience in different industries? I find that those leaders are much more robust than a leader that has had a very narrow focused career.
Okay.
Yeah.
So being able to actually see things before others see, and
Yeah. And if I can build on that a little bit, I think Vietnam is seen as a market where leaders get tested as well. So I see a lot of inexperienced young leaders that have been promoted up, and Vietnam becomes their testing ground as well.
okay.
And they're very easy to spot compared to those leaders that have had this really varied career.
Okay. Now, how do you stay grounded and stay positive when things get tough?
Yeah, that one's difficult. One thing I realized very early is leadership's a very lonely game to play. You don't have people directing you. You rarely get recognition. You don't have people motivating you around you. So it's got to come from you. So how I respond to that is you really need to understand what motivates you, and then you've got to find the things in your work or in your life to drive those motivators. So my personal example is I love seeing results. So if I'm working on a long project and the results aren't obvious for a long time, I can feel my motivation dropping. So I need to set milestones where I can get the results. I love a challenge. I love pushing myself to the limit. So in my personal life, I've taken up a sport where I have to push myself to the limit. So I'm constantly injecting that into my life so I can get that buzz or the motivation from there as well. So it's about understanding your motivations and then putting those in your life and your work.
Yeah, that's really good. As a leader trying to help motivate staff, is there any insight on how you can help people find their motivation?
Yeah, so, and for me, this is super obvious, but a lot of leaders and managers miss this. Is just ask your people what motivates them, and then give them that motivation. Don't guess. Don't assume what motivates people. Don't rely on the theory of this generation gets motivated by that. Just ask the people, have a conversation. What motivates you? Give them that motivation.
Yeah, that's good. I think for me, when I realized I actually can't motivate somebody, then it started to dawn on me, and then I had to start figuring out what those people really made them happy, what made them sad, what are they striving to be or could be. And then within those three things, I could kind of get something, but then it always would change because I would have a sales guy, not married, wants a PlayStation or something. That's his motivation. And then he gets married, and then it's like you have to have that talk again and say, hey, now you got to change your mindset now. Yeah. And then they got a kid, and now you got to change it again. So
right.
That's really good. If you could tell your 30-year-old self some advice that maybe someone that's a young leader today could receive, what would it be?
Okay. Leadership's not for everyone. We're constantly told that, your career path is to be an individual contributor, then a manager, then you become a leader. Definitely not for everyone. I've been in the leadership game now for over 30 years. And if I talk to those people that have had similar careers to me and they've been people managers since they were 20, 21 years old, we all have the same insight. And the insight is managing people is hard. And I've heard people use the language, managing people sucks as well. It's hard. You get disappointed. You have setbacks. People surprise you. People disappoint you as well. So one is leadership's not for everyone. And if you do want to go into the leadership sphere, one is you've got to enjoy a challenge. You've got to be able to bounce back from setbacks because you're going to have constant setbacks, or you have to have this real love, deep love for people. And that's not for everyone.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that first realization that when you move from, let's say, a salesperson to a sales manager, and then it's not about you anymore, it's about everyone else. And that's hard transition, especially for high-performing salespeople. I usually can't find top sales guy does not make a very good manager. That number 3, number 2 guy, he's the one because he can get it. You got to help other people.
Yeah. So managing people is dealing with an unknown and dealing with something that is highly unpredictable. And that's where the surprises come in.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. What, now you help leaders make some serious pivots, and you have learned, what have you learned about identity when somebody loses or changes their title? So you get maybe demoted.
Hey, in a Vietnam context, and more so in a Vietnam context, they're one of the same thing. Essentially, your title is your identity. You know, with title comes influence, comes power, comes position. So if that is taken away from you, it's a direct impact on you, on who you are and your identity. And then vice versa, if somebody is given more title or a higher position, it comes with more power and influence. It touches directly on the ego and on face as well. So it has a huge impact here.
Yeah, that losing face thing is really serious. And that was one of the things I noticed also when I moved here, is people would associate their actual name with whatever business or product they were in. You know, and I would see that, wow, I mean, that's really, you know, pretty deep. And then for them not to have that, oh my goodness.
Yeah, and for, you know, in the US or Australia, your identity is not necessarily linked to what you do in the workplace.
Yeah. I used to joke a little bit when I first got here, because so worried about titles, and I'm like, it doesn't matter that much. But for them, it mattered extremely. I said, hey, you can be the director of sanitation if you need to be. You're still just the garbage man, right? It just, but you know, they have a sense of pride with their work based off of that also. And I found that that's something that I had to really take into consideration. I would have somebody leave me for almost no money difference, but just the title change. I was like, wow, okay. Yeah. Tell us about a time someone believed in you before you believed in yourself.
You know, I can't put a particular finger on a time that actually happened. I think very, very early on in my leadership journey and my leadership career, a different approach was taken from me. We were thrown in the deep end. We were thrown into situations so we can trial and error, fail, succeed. So we never had anybody saying, we believe in you, we believe in you. You had to build the belief yourself. And I think I still carry that on in how I work with my people as well. I put them in situations so they can test themselves, and they can build their own belief rather than me saying, hey, I believe in you.
Yeah, that's good.
Yep.
You're playing chess over there at LHH. Yeah, I believe also with you that people have to get out of their comfort zone to grow.
Yep.
And if you hold their hand through the whole thing, then nothing happened. They were not in their comfort zone.
Yeah.
And challenging people that you see have potential is a really good way of doing that. You know, I think of how I can, you know, I see in people a lot of times in my own team, I see that they have potential to be this thing. And, you know, when I tell them, they still don't believe you. You know, it's amazing how people really will suppress that, or it's that mindset of I can't do it, or it won't work, or, you know, somehow I was hurt in the past and now.
As a general rule, I find that if people are given more authority, or they're given a bigger title, or they're given more scope, they usually raise to the challenge. And it doesn't need to be accompanied with I believe in you. It's, I'm going to put you in that position and I want you to prove it to yourself that you can actually do this.
Yeah.
And most of the time people do raise to the challenge.
If you were to coach somebody on unlocking their potential, you know, what would that look like?
Unlocking potential. I'm probably going to answer this in more of a indirect way. I think there's two schools of thoughts out there. One is that you unlock potential by focusing on people's strengths. That's one school of thought. And you see this coming through with things like Strength Finder, which was very popular sort of 10 to 15 years ago. The other school of thought is, hey, those strengths are all good. They're always going to be there. But what I'm more interested in doing is finding out where your gaps are and then closing those gaps. I am definitely on the latter side. So whenever I'm working with my clients or my coaches, I'm always working on closing those gaps. I'm not ignoring the strengths, I'm leveraging the strengths, but I'm very interested in closing the gaps. I think there's a huge danger in just focusing on strengths, because if you just focus on strengths, those weaknesses are always going to be there, and they're going to surface as well. So that's why I have very much of a focus on let's close those gaps to unlock your potential.
Yeah. I have been on the close your gap side.
Yep.
And then I was sold that you need to focus on these people's strengths, and then that, you know, really to let the horses run on that. And then I've moved back to I've tried it both ways, and I still keep seeing this issue of, this isn't right. You got to fix it. And I think as a leader, it's really important that you do have to point out people's blind spots.
Yep.
And if you just ignore their blind spots on top of that, you know, your few guys that can really run and go with their strengths still can't haul people that they're lagging.
If I ground this in a very simple example, I was working with a young lady. She was a senior leader. She worked in a leadership team, and there were three key people. There was the GM, there was the head of marketing, the lady that I was working with, and the head of sales. When the GM and the head of sales got together, they treated every conversation as an opportunity to brainstorm new, innovative ideas. And they would drive this lady crazy because she was marketing, her plans were long-term, she had a plan, she liked to stick to the plan. So her response to those two people was very negative. She would constantly say, won't work, we have a plan, and they saw her as a very negative. So if I took the former approach of just focusing on her strengths, that would not have fixed the issue. So what I actually had to do was show her what was the implications of her behavior, and could she adjust that to go and play their game as well. So I closed the gap in her weakness rather than just leverage her strengths, and it fixed the problem.
Wow, that's good. Yeah, that's really good. When you're coaching someone that really doubts themselves, what's your first step to giving them some clarity?
Okay. This is a really common problem. I think most of us have doubts about our own capability. And in particular, when I'm working with senior executives, I see it in all of them. You hear about the imposter syndrome. Why am I here? Why did I get selected? Why am I doing this job and not someone else? So I help them in a couple of different ways. The first one is just to reassure them, hey, this is normal. What you're feeling, the doubts that you're having, nearly all executives have the same. I've got the same imposter syndrome as well. And then the next one is the discussion then becomes, why are you here? What have been your successes? What have you been recognized for? So then you're like building their confidence or building the business cases. Hey, you're here for a reason. People saw something in you. They recognize a capability. You are sitting in the right job in here. So it's just a huge confidence boost for them. So I take that two-step approach with them.
Oh, that's really good. I don't know why insecurity became, sugar-coated as imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's 100% normal to be insecure.
Yeah, for sure.
And everybody's forgetting what got them there.
Yep.
That's true. No, that's really, really true. I like that a lot. Now, at your company right now, your team that's working for you, how do you maybe look at people and say, okay, what do you judge them on whether you think they can be a leader or they can move up to another level?
So if I'm looking for leaders, their technical skill or their functional skill starts to become less relevant. It needs to be there. If you're leading a group of salespeople, you've got to be a good salesperson yourself. But what I'm mostly looking for is willingness. I'm looking for how they interact with other people. Whether they've had that soft power influence before they got the title. Could they get people to do things before they had the positional power to do that? And do I believe that they can coordinate and get the best thing out of their people? So what I'm trying to say here is the soft skill side for me is much more important than the hard skill. And what I find here in Vietnam, and I've observed it in other countries, is people tend to get promoted based on their hard skills rather than their soft skills. And there's this attitude of, once I put you in the position, then we will close the gap. But leadership for me is you've got to be demonstrating that you've already got those fundamental skills there before I put you into a leadership position.
Yeah, that's really good. So attitude and soft skills, really, the willingness to go above and beyond what's expected of you.
Absolutely.
And I think you're spot on. Those are a couple things that I'm also the same way as. And then I think a lot of people, and I see this when I am interviewing people, like, what's the career path, right? And then there may be disappointment when they didn't get this promotion, but they did absolutely nothing to help themselves learn that new position. It's like they think the new position will come, and then they'll learn the skill.
Yeah, my observation is there's a lot of expectations and there's a lot of entitlement around promotion that doesn't necessarily follow, hey, you've got to take some ownership here. You've got to start demonstrating before we give you the opportunity.
When I was building the team here, I promoted a few people too early, but I needed them in these jobs. But I had an expat working for me at the time. And, he's watching these people get promoted that, they probably weren't ready, but I had no one else. And he came into me one day and he says, you know how many years I worked before I got promoted to that job? 14 years. I was in 14 years and I'm like, I get it. I mean, it's.
Well, businesses have
Trap.
grown
Yeah,
fast
we've
here.
grown.
You've had to promote people very quickly, and if you compare a mid-level manager in Vietnam compared to a mid-level manager in the US, there's a huge age difference there.
Oh, correct. Yes, no doubt. That's really good. How would you assess somebody's strengths and weaknesses without using Strength Finder?
From my technical coaching side, I don't rely on one input or one data set. I want as many as I can. So I do use the assessments.
Mm-hmm.
I do use personality assessments, and I'll come back to that before. But I'm very interested in how other people view them. What's the perceptions of that person, and so I'm trying to talk to as many people as possible, the GM, the HR, peers, to try to get that full picture. And I'm also very interested in how that person views themselves as well, because sometimes there's a gap or a misalignment there. I mentioned personality assessments before, because if I'm trying to shift somebody's behavior, I want to understand what's hardwired that's going to be very difficult to change versus something that's easy to change. And to give an example of that is, if a company turns around to me and says, hey, I want that person to be more outspoken, I want them to share their ideas, I want them to talk up during meetings, and I see that person is highly introverted, I know that behavior is hardwired in them. They can do it, but they can only do it for short bursts of time. So the discussion with that person becomes very different. I'm not trying to change who you are. I just want to change your behavior for short periods of time. And then you can go back to being Mr. or Mrs. Introvert when the situation is over.
Okay, that's really good. I like that. In all the years of having people do these assessments,
Yep.
How many times have you seen somebody retake it and it's way different?
All the time.
Okay.
You know, it's a snapshot in time.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
And the theory behind, say, personality assessment is your personality doesn't change. That's not true. Your personality changes over time. You have outside influences, therefore you behave in a different way.
Yeah.
If you're talking about things like capability assessment, your capability ebbs and flows. It increases and it decreases over time.
Oh, no doubt. I always think about that. It's like, man, if I took that over again, I bet it'd be completely different.
Yeah, yep, absolutely. Yeah.
And then, you waste your money on it. Who have been the most impactful mentors that you've had that shaped your leadership?
I was really lucky when I was young. I was surrounded by brilliant leaders, and when I see those people now in society, they're politicians, they're business leaders, they're influential people in society. So they were great leaders. One stands out to me, and this was actually a negative mentorship. This guy was brilliant as a leader. I think he was probably one of the best leaders that I have ever come across. But one particular situation that I was interacting with that I interacted with him, taught me what not to do with people. So I got a negative lesson out of him. And the situation was, I needed a particular career move. I needed to be overseas, getting certain exposure, and that would have helped my career. So I went to this guy for sponsorship. I said, hey, I need this. He agreed that it was important for me. He said that he would sponsor me. The next thing I knew is he was telling everybody that Gary shouldn't do this opportunity. So what he said was completely different. So my takeaway from that was, don't hold people back. If there's something that's good for their career, if somebody wants to leave the company for another experience, don't hold them back. My other lesson from that was, you've got to take ownership of your own career as well. Don't let other people drive that. and also understand that other people's motivations are going to drive them to do things that are against your interests as well. So you need to be aware of that.
Oh yeah, I've seen that happen in Vietnam.
He was a fantastic mentor, but that one situation really stood by me.
That's good.
Yeah.
I think the people really should look at, who their boss is and what they can learn from that person more than their salary and more than, what their time off is or their benefits. If you could give me one book that you think a young leader should be reading.
One book. The Dale Carnegie book, I think, stands out. How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's fantastic. That book's been around for, I think, almost 100 years.
Yeah.
But the lessons in there still hold true. So that one's great. And then to come back to my earlier point about understanding personality, there's some great books out there about understanding personality. If you can start grasping that at an early point in your career, it makes it so much easier to understand people.
Yeah. And you can put them in the right position.
You can put them in the right position.
Yeah, there's a lot of good people in my past that I put in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
They're just because I didn't know any better. Oh, that's really good. Yeah, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends, Influence People. My dad gave it to me when I was like 12, and I looked at it like, are you serious? I flip over, and it's made in 19.
Language is
12 or something. And then, of course, I read it, but I didn't take it to heart. Yep. And then I read it again after I was in sales, and it's like, wow, okay, this all makes sense. And it is crazy. Human nature hasn't changed much, and people love to hear their name and all those things that it talks about in there. No, that's really good. So I'll put a link in the show notes. You guys got to pick up that book for sure. Do me a favor, read it. It's gold. Gary, 30 years from now, someone finds this video, and it's somebody that you really love and somebody that you really want to see be successful in their life.
Yep.
What would you, when they scroll across this, what do you want to say to them? How can they unlock their own potential, or how can they get the most out of life?
I think it's about not necessarily finding your passion. I'm not this big believer that you have to follow your passion in life, but find something that is comfortable for you, something that you enjoy all the time. And if we're talking about careers, there's I don't know if it's a misnomer or a myth or there's a lot of fact behind it, but you find a lot of people in Eastern cultures who follow the path that their parents want for them. So they go into careers which are not a good fit. So I've taken a really different approach with my boy who's now at university. I've allowed him to navigate that path, but I've also tried to guide him as much as possible. But at the end of the day, it's his decision. And I think he's heading in the right track. He's interested in a career which is a very good fit for him. It took some guiding, but he's found that. And I think through that process, he is going to have a much happier life than if I said, hey, you should go and do this. This is where there's good money, or where there's going to be a lot of potential. It's much better that he's found his own path.
No, that's really good, Gary, for sure. Yeah, who knows what's going to happen in 20 years from now?
Absolutely no idea.
What jobs will even be around. It's going to be very interesting.
Yeah, I think 5 years' time, it's going to look very different.
5 hours from now, it'd be different. I really have learned a lot. I had kids when I was younger, and now I have a little boy now. And I really understand now how you can't be the contractor of who they're going to be. You can't construct it. You can't make it. You really just have to be the shepherd and try to keep them in the fence and let them, sort it out.
Yep.
Especially when teenage years come and they rebel against you, and that's just human nature. It's normal. I think that it's people just take it personally when that happens
Yeah.
really a lot. But,
Yep.
I think it's that way because, they wanted, human nature you need to split off from your family to start a new family. And I think that's why rebellion comes.
I was predicting the rebellion. Unfortunately, it didn't come. I took a slightly different approach. I pushed the independence as much as possible. I allowed him to make decisions. I put a little bit of a ring fence, your analogy of shepherding.
Yeah.
So I put a bit of a ring fence, but I allowed him to play in that area. So, I think rebellion, a lot of it comes from pushing too much.
Mm-hmm.
So I kept the field as open as possible when I allowed him to make decisions. So I didn't see the rebellion come.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Gary, thank you very much for taking your time to run over here. Yep. Now, if I met you in the elevator and I asked you what your company does and you got a minute to tell me, what is it?
Okay, so it's called LHH. We're part of the Adecco Group. So we're one of the biggest consultancy companies in the world. Here in Vietnam, we're doing two different things. One is we're doing leadership development, so anything from training to performance coaching to executive coaching. And they're predominantly multinationals. The other side of our business is what's called outplacement and career transition. So if companies are restructuring, they're going through an M&A, maybe they're downsizing, we support the people side. So if somebody is impacted by a redundancy, we help those people with the next career move.
Yeah, that's really good. Okay, I'll put your company website in there, how people can get a hold of you. Again, thanks, Gary. Appreciate it.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, that was Gary Malcolm reminding us that the best investment any company can make is in their people. Now, if you found this of value today, this conversation, do me a favor, share it with a colleague or leader you respect. And remember, your potential and the potential of the people around you is always waiting to be unlocked. See you next time.